The following broadcast is a Nighthawk Network presentation.
What up, though, my people? What's going on? It's your boy E-Buck, also known as the Nighthawk, in the building for another Tuesday to have good discussions with y'all about things that I think about while many of you sleep. This week, we are having a special episode that I'm calling School Dayz because we're talking all things school. As you know, many of you either have kids that are starting back school now, already started school, or about to start school, and we definitely want to talk to you guys this evening about some of the do's and don'ts, some of the things we should discuss, some of the things that we haven't discussed enough in regards to getting our kids properly prepared for school and getting them ready to have an awesome school year. So I have taken the time to speak to some of my educator friends and some of my parents out there to discuss what we need to talk about, and we're going to put it out there to the public. If you are one of those people that are tuning in that are either an educator or a parent, any of your expertise or any of your thoughts in regards to some of our comments this evening, we definitely want to hear from you guys as well. Feel free to come out in the comments and discuss with us. That is my guy Kenyon Spraggins in the building as he is starting back school. Shout out to him and his new year down there at Sam Houston State University. Good luck this year, my friend, in both your academics and, of course, in your hooping as well. Looking forward to seeing big things from you. Want you to make that tournament this year, my boy. Let's get in that boy and do some things with it. You feel me? Get them, fam. That being said, we are going to get to rolling here. We're going to talk about school and all that good stuff that is involved. But first, let us set the proper mood here. So I'm actually going to change my good old Nighthawk setting there that I usually have for my background and do something a little bit more appropriate for this episode. We're going to change it to the classroom because, hey, that's what we're talking about, right? So we all in class. Let class be in session. Let's get it. And like I said, if you got any comments that you feel would be appropriate for this conversation, by all means, please feel free to post them in the comments. We will read them and discuss with you guys as well. So that being said, let's get started. I think in terms of all the people I talked to, the first thing I would suggest for any of you, particularly on the parent side of the issue, is to sit down with your child, whether you've done so already or need to do so, and discuss what you think should be discussed in regards to this school year. In other words, if you have not talked to your child about, okay, here is school, you're in whatever grade, this is what I expect as your parent, or this is what should be expected of you, then I think that's a conversation you guys should definitely have with your child or your children in regards to school. I know oftentimes there are parents who basically look forward to that day when that kid turns 4 or 5 and say, okay, now it's time for you to go to school. Here's some school clothes, here's some pencils, pens, good luck, have a good year, stay out of trouble. And that's about the extent of the conversation. There is no other discussions being had in regards to what your behavior should be like in school, what you should be learning, what you should do if you're not learning. These are the things that we want to talk about tonight because I think it is very important that your child or your children know what to expect, what is to be expected of them, how they can be model school citizens, so to speak. Because I think oftentimes that is the mentality of several of our parents to just basically ship them off to school, and that's just 7 to 9 hours that you don't have to be bothered with them, and you can go do what you want to do, as opposed to even being concerned to a greater degree as to what they're actually doing or learning in school. For some of you, let's be honest, y'all hated school. Y'all hated every single day you had to go there and learn anything. You did not like it. You know that it is required by law that your child is to go to school. So as a result, you basically deal with it the best way you know how, to where they go and you don't get in trouble. You just don't want to get fined. You know what I'm saying? So whether they learn what they should learn or not, you're not as focused upon. I think if that is truly your thought process, and granted, I don't think there's many parents that have that thought process, but for the few of you that do, I will say to you guys, that's very selfish. That is not a good way to think, because remember, it is your responsibility, more so even than the teachers, to help your child develop to be a quality human being, a good adult out here in these streets. And in order for them to set up to be successful, they need to learn the basic skills that all of us know in order to work out what we need to work out as we become adults. And if they don't properly learn it, that puts them behind the 8 ball for the rest of their lives. And if that's something you don't care about or want for your child, then I think it's something wrong with you, plain and simple. Note the shirt that I'm wearing this evening. Always know your self-worth. You want that for yourself. You want that for your child to know what their self-worth is. And how do you learn that? You learn that in these early stages of life, in going to school and appropriate behaviors and things of that nature. Now, in talking to some of my educator friends in regards to that, one of the greater issues that they are having right now with our children is the fact that they go to school and they do not properly present themselves in school, in class. In other words, they have behavioral issues that definitely stem from how they apparently act at home. If basically when your child is home, you allow them just to roam the house and act a fool and yell and scream at the top of their lungs and do whatever they want with very little consequences, why would you think they would act any differently once they get to school? That's exactly how they're acting when they get to school. And you are now leaving that responsibility to the educator to basically teach your child some manners or how to properly act. And that is not necessarily part of the job. I mean, there are teachers that do it, obviously, but no, some of those things they should already know to do once they get to school. Let's be honest. As we got our good buddy Road checking in, that is Road to Stardom. As always, we want to encourage you to follow Road to Stardom on social media, whether it be her Facebook or Instagram page. In order to find her, you will look up Road to Stardom. You should see this symbol right here on said page of Road to Stardom. And then at that point, you want to follow her. She is big into independent music. She is definitely a vanguard for that. So you will learn a lot about independent music through her. She also does other music as well. And then, of course, she has her page where she sells her products, her shirts, and coffee mugs, and all types of goodies. You definitely want to check that out. Remember, it's still early, but you want to look to some early, unique Christmas ideas, that's one place you can go. Support my buddy Road to Stardom. I would appreciate that. She always supports the network, so we want to do our best to support her back in return. Thank you, Road, always for checking in. Now back to the discussion. Good people, I need you to understand that there are parents who are sending their kids to school with the understanding that all the children that are going to school with them have already had many of these discussions that we're talking about right now. So that when the kid goes to school, they are not distracted by the children who do not choose to deal with school properly. They are not sitting there trying to gain their education, but in the meanwhile have to contend with that kid in class that's constantly making disturbances, so that you make it harder for the educator that's there at the front of that class to teach the children what they need to know. So first and foremost, have discussions with your children about proper behavior in school and what have you. Now, I kind of want to go through all the different levels of schools at this point, and some of the things that I've talked about with them, some of the things I've thought about in terms of how grades and things should correspond. For example, of course, There are a lot of people that have the opportunity now to send their children to preschool. Remember, as a 70s and 80s baby, preschool was something that was just really catching on when I started school. So there was not a lot of places that even offered preschool. Now most of your major school districts do offer some type of preschool education that you can enroll your child in. Um, it's not just a place where you send them and they basically get babysat and learn little fun games and stuff. They actually learn good life things like, how to act in a public environment, basically how to do a lot of little stuff that you should learn early on in life in terms of how to behave, little basic skills like how to tie your shoes or how to put your coat on properly or, things like that, how to start out with your ABCs and your numbers and telling time and, listening skills, those types of things. They're learning those types of things in preschool. It's not just them getting dropped off and they run around and play all day on the jungle gym. There are actually preschools that are actually teaching children things that are very helpful as they move forward to bigger and longer parts of the education or process. Also, you might want to be very mindful of where you send your child to school. I think this counts for any grade level in terms of, okay, familiarize yourself with that school. If possible, check out what type of accreditations they have. Most definitely visit the facilities if possible and check out everything that you can. Check out the kitchen facilities if they have them. Check out the playground equipment. Check out the environment where the kids are going to congregate. You want to check out as much as you possibly can so you know that when you are sending your child to that place for however long they're going to be there, that they are in a safe environment, they are in a comfortable environment, and they're not around people who you have to question in terms of how they will deal with your children once you drop them off with them. That is definitely something that you want to be very mindful of, especially early on when your child may be able to talk at this point, but not able to fully express themselves in a way to where if something bad happens to them, they can fully explain to you exactly what happened, and then you can look into it from there. Now, that being said, let us move on to the kindergarten level. Understand, a lot of people don't put a lot of good emphasis on the kindergarten grade. You basically feel like the two things or three things you learn are the ABCs, the one, two, threes, and your colors. And as long as you know those things and learn how to share your toys a little bit, that should be enough to graduate you from kindergarten. I think that to not be true at all. You definitely learn good quality. And if you have a kindergarten teacher who is really about their business, they are teaching your children other things during that time. They're getting them started early on the actual recognition of words, even reading to some degree. Keep in mind, by the time I went to kindergarten, I myself knew how to read. I understand I'm more of the exception than the rule when it came to that, but that's because I had a parent that was very focused on getting us to learn things in a way to where that would be helpful overall. Not to mention, I had a parent that was willing to help educate us beyond the classroom. I think that is also a problem that we're running into in a lot of these classroom situations where you have kids on the one hand that are learning things not only in school but outside of school, and then there's kids that is basically being dropped off to be babysat for 8 hours, and whether they learn the stuff or not is not as important as them just not getting in trouble. And that's basically the focus that those parents, or the lack of focus that those particular parents had. Now, keep in mind, in terms of kindergarten, what is definitely helpful as I talk to educators is that if you have children that are already in school, if they can give that child kind of a understanding of the process, particularly like say, if you have a kid that's starting kindergarten, but then you have a child that is their older sibling that is in like the second or third grade, so they are familiar with the process, they have not been long removed from it, so they can kind of help the kids in a way, they can kind of help tutor that child because they are familiar with what is being learned nowadays in kindergarten as opposed to say 30, 40 years ago. Keep in mind, if you think, okay, well, what kids learn today is standard. What I learned in third grade is the same thing that kid is learning in third grade. I am here to tell you that is not the case. In terms of some of the educational tools and the curriculum, how they are styled now, what we view as basic math is being taught in a whole different sense. When you have the boxes and even how some of the story problems and things are set up now, it's very different than how we learned it. So you may not always be able to help your child in the way that you think you would. That's why it's helpful that if you have children and they kind of stepchildren to where, okay, that child is a few years older than that, and so on and so forth, that if you can have your child help the other children in part of the learning process. But when I say help, have them help, not have them take over for you, not become the de facto parent to where, okay, now when it's time for school, I don't want to be bothered with you. You go to your big sister and big brother and have them teach you what you need to know and ask them the questions and whatnot. It is still, as the parent, your responsibility to make sure that all your children are being educated and comfortable with their education. Don't feel like that you should just pawn that responsibility off on their teachers or their siblings for that matter. This is all that thing that we talk about when we say it takes a village to raise a child. Let them be part of the village. Let them be the whole village. Because then when things happen later on in life and you try to understand why my child feels that way about me, these are some of the things that as a child you think about. Keep in mind, we all benefit from the fact that we all have been children at one point in time. So when we see certain things that were difficult for us, we should understand in this day and age that might be just the same or even more difficult for our children based on what's going on in the world, as opposed to the world that we grew up in, where many of us were allowed to be children till we became adults. In this day and age, it's very hard once you get to a certain age, maybe say 8 or 9, to keep your child in a child's place when they are seeing all type of adult things all around them all the time. And if you are not there to explain or have good teachers that are willing to not only teach the curriculum, but help your child in their life development as well, then you find yourself in a situation where it's like, okay, I don't know this kid. You should never get to that point where you feel like you cannot relate to your child on some level. When we do that, there's that. One of the people's putting in, I'm still a kid. I'm trying to find out who said that. Oh, that would be the birthday boy, Mr. Morgan, who chimed in with that. Happy birthday, Zach. How old a kid are you today, by the way, sir? Let us all acknowledge Mr. Morgan on his birthday. I'm hoping that you are having a good time. I see you have found some romance going on there. Got your little relationship thing going on according to your Facebook post. Congratulations, sir. He is claiming the ripe old age of 37 today. So happy 37th birthday to Mr. Zachary Morgan. We appreciate you for chiming in, my friend. Ro also chiming in with happy birthday. And Mark said, yes, I did indeed find a good woman. I am glad. Hopefully things work out well for you, my friend. Appreciate you chiming in. Okay, so we done got to kindergarten. We passed that. We are now moving on to the 1st to 5th grade. And keep in mind, folks, these, in my opinion, are the most critical grades of any of them, because you are building the basic building blocks to that person's educational future in those grades. Particularly, I would say 1st to 4th grade. 5th grade, a little different, but those first 2 grades, because keep in mind, you are learning the main things that are very vital to everyday life. You are learning how to spell. You are learning what words mean. You are learning how to read. You are learning the basic math skills with the adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. You are learning your fractions at that point. You are learning the decimal system. These are all, you're learning to count money. These are all the very important things that everyday people use in everyday life. So it is very key that if you know nothing else, that you learn those vital things early on. Learning how to deal with people is what somebody else chimed in with. That's what Zach said. Absolutely. You are learning early on how to contend in an environment with more than just not yourself. Keep in mind, there are more people growing up now as only children than in the history of the world. There are more people that are having just one kid than ever before. So understand, as educators do, that some of the children they are teaching, they are only children. As a result, their behavior may be different than those who are growing up with siblings and what have you. Because keep in mind, you come from an environment where more than likely, as an only child, you don't have to share it with anyone. You have your own space at home where nobody is, allowed to deal with your environment and whatnot. And then you come to school and you have to share your day with all these people, granted, people of the same particular age, but basically not your family. That is a big step up for some folks, particularly when it's not stressed to you at home that, okay, when you're in school, things are different. You are feeling like, okay, it should be like it is at home. It's all about me. Some educators are saying they are having trouble with that narcissistic mentality that kids are growing up with now because they are being led to believe you are the king and queen of the world. It's all about you. It's your world. We just in it. And they come to school with that attitude, and it makes dealing with them and trying to teach them things very difficult for some of our educators. We got to get into the mindset of how these kids are thinking and feeling and let them know that when they are in a classroom, things are different. One of the things that my mother used to tell us is that when you go to said school or whatnot, you are not to embarrass me because when you are there, you represent me and this family. And I don't need people thinking that we are raising bad kids and that this family don't know how to teach people how to treat people. So yes, we were taught to be mannerable. We actually learned from our grandparents to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. We didn't always do that, mind you, because we weren't always comfortable. Because again, if you're the only person in class saying it like that, you get laughed at and teased and whatnot. So there's that to contend with. I got my buddy Hugh Lee, the sports guru himself, checking in. He is saying, I was blessed to be going to a school with black, white, and Mexican children. It helped me to learn different cultures, and I was exposed to communicate with multiple races. I actually did ask one of the educators in regard that they are teaching in a Texas school system right now where it is actually that particular mix of individuals. And she said that it is definitely a better and more comfortable environment in terms of learning as opposed to having taught in a all white school or all black school or all Hispanic school. It is good that you have that cultural diversity in schools. Keep in mind though, in terms of bullying, of course, we have to talk about bullying. A lot of the bullying that goes on now is not so much in regards to I'm the big kid, you're the little kid. A lot of the bullying goes into, okay, you're black, I'm white, I don't like you. You like girls, I like boys, I don't like you. Those types of things. A lot of the hate speech and hate crimes is involved in a lot of today's bullying. And when you have a more diverse school, you tend to have less of that goes on, as opposed to a school where there's just a few here and a few there. So that is something to think about in terms of school. One thing we definitely want to talk about is most school districts now have it to where you can make choices as to where to send your child. Remember, there used to be a time where, okay, if you were in this neighborhood, your kid had to go to this school or that school, unless, of course, they were like Catholic, in which case go to Catholic school and so on and so forth. There are more choices now for schools. So keep in mind, it may be convenient to send your kid to the school that's right down the street, so you don't have to worry about busing and things of that nature, but it may not always be in the best interest of said child to go to that school. So it is important, like I said, as parents, that you take the time out, whether it be you or the other parent or both parents, if they are available, to check out these schools and see what that school offers, what type of environment that school is, check out the little things like, okay, is there things going on in this school that I would not care for my child to be exposed to? Do these schools have good bathrooms? Do these schools have proper heating and lighting? Do these schools have an issue with overcrowding? Things of that nature. These are the things you want to check out early on. I did ask, and one of the educators agreed that if you are in the school and early on you start to see problems that you don't like, don't feel like you can't just up and uproot that child and have them go somewhere else. Schools are better prepared now for kids going in and out early on. I mean, from my experience in doing what I do for work, I've noticed that there are several parents that may start out the school year a little later than most kids because they want to kind of do that research or get a better understanding first before they commit that child to that school. Or early on, they're not liking how their kid is responding to that particular school, and they decide to send them elsewhere. Um, there are those of you who are very serious about the environment that your child is in. That is why you may send them to a religious school, so to speak, because you feel like that would be a school that better serves how your child's behavior is going, or you basically don't want them to be in certain environments. That's why you choose to send them to the Catholic school or the Orthodox school or the Jewish school, whatever the case may be, because you feel like it's better for them to be around the environment that you feel they would be around in most circumstances. In an ideal world where your child is going to grow up and become a member of society, a society where they more than likely will meet people from all different cultures and races, I think it is in your best interest to send your child to a place where they can experience as many different things and people as possible. And if you're not able to do that because of where you may live or whatnot, try to find opportunities to have that child experience other people outside of just their community or their classroom. That is why there's a lot of places now that have like outside activities for after school that can happen at. Uh, I know I probably would have benefited even more if there were more after school activities that I could have done, seeing that, you know, at least, especially early on in my school career, oftentimes I found myself bored and, you know, I would do my homework in school and all that. So by the time I got home, you know, I had to wait for everybody to do their homework and I'm just sitting there with nothing better to do. I think things that definitely helped me were things where they had after school programs where I could be in the art club or the glee club or things of that nature that gave me some other things to concentrate and focus on. I think it's very good. This is my personal thoughts that your kids have other activities outside of just the normal school day, if possible, to kind of give them more of a well-rounded view of what a school environment is or just what life is like, so that when you grow up you have developed hobbies based on things that you learn in some of the after school programs, or you basically develop other interests because of that. You become more of a like I said, more of a well-rounded person from having gained that experience outside of just doing the usual reading, writing, arithmetic, you know. Another key component in the early education process is our learning of history. As you know, if you've been watching the news to any degree, there are a lot of changes that are being made through a variety of different school districts across the country in regards to what we should teach in terms of our history and how we should teach it, particularly when it comes to teaching American history, and of course, definitely when it comes to the teaching of slavery. Now, basically, what we're learning is that some school districts, they want to touch on slavery as little as possible. And then, of course, there's that ridiculous notion from the one school district that basically wants to teach us that slavery taught basic skills that were helpful to Black people. I want to put several cuss words behind that. If I had the editing capabilities to do so, I would. And it would just pop up the screen like bop, 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 bop. This is why I need tech support beyond myself during these broadcasts. because that's what would be going across the screen right now. Because that's all BS. It's smurfing BS, okay? Slavery was not that at all. And I think we as a society must remember that old adage: if we do not learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. So it is important that not only that we teach history, and it is a key part of our curriculum, but that we teach the history honestly and correctly. No, we don't want to make it an environment where, okay, suddenly black kids hate white kids because of slavery, or white kids feel bad for slavery. No, we don't want that at all. Of course not. But in the same token, these things happen, and it's important that they know this so that as the future formulates, they know what not to do. They know why black people feel the way they do. They know why white people feel the way they do. They know that there are different thought processes behind it all. They learned that it wasn't just black people that were slaves. There were white slaves. There were Indian slaves. They learned that, yes, there were black people that enslave other black people. These are all things that you should know. You should know why that happened. You should know why the country is formulated the way it is. There's a reason why once you get to a certain part of the country, there's a lot of Hispanic people, and they're not just people that moved from Mexico. They have been here this whole time, and that at some point in time, parts of Texas and New Mexico and whatnot was not America. It was Mexico. These are things that we should learn. You should learn about the wars and why there was a World War One and Two and the Vietnam War and all the things that involved in that. These are things that you should be learning early on in education. Okay, another comment here. If you go to prison, you are a slave. The government owns you. That is Zach saying that. And yes, even if it is possible to teach a curriculum that talks about the prison system, I absolutely believe you should teach that. There should be people like Zach who have been incarcerated and have definitely learned and become meaningful people in our society that could come to a classroom and tell people about, okay, I went to prison, this is why, learn from my mistakes, etc. Those things are very helpful, just like it is when you have a career day and you have people come in and talk about their career and how they got into it. I think, truthfully, that should be a curriculum in and of itself, particularly as we get to some of our older grades. You should have a better understanding of how much these professional people make, what it takes to actually be qualified in these situations. They should not only just sit down and come in your class for a few minutes to talk about it. It should be a day where the firefighter comes in, a day where the policeman comes in, a day where the computer programmer comes in, a day when the teacher comes in, a day when the professor or the principal comes in, and they fully explain what their job entails. Yeah, even so far as to have your restaurant workers come in and talk about that life. So you have a better understanding, okay, this is maybe what I want to do in life. This is maybe what I don't want to do in life. That part. So anyway, like I said, we've talked about from fifth grade on down, and one of the things that I discussed with my friends, both educator and parent alike, is what is your thought on what I often call the third parent? That would be one of these folks, the good old smartphone. Now, on the one hand, I was definitely a component of saying, okay, we should not have any phones in school to at least the latter years of high school, 10th to 12th grade, because they are distractions. Kids will be on them constantly in class, so on and so forth. One of the educators actually told me that they've had situations where kids in the middle of class, while learning a lesson, while they are talking to the students, are up in class answering the phone, talking to a parent or a friend or whatnot during class as if nobody else is sitting around them at all. Keeping in mind that a lot of people nowadays, when they talk on the phone, much like myself, they don't talk on the phone. They actually put it on speaker and talk on the phone that way. How many people have you seen walk down the street like these? You know what I'm saying? And they're actually doing that in class during a lesson. Not only is that rude, but that is incredibly disrespectful and interruptive. How are you going to concentrate in class when you are definitely hearing these two individuals talk on the phone about God knows what? Also understand that more times than not, if they have that phone in class and they are on it, they are not doing anything to utilize it to learn the lesson. They're doing something that's distracting them from said lesson. That part. Now, understand for whatever we're talking about here in regards to schooling and how school is conducted, we are behind in terms of the world because the world is dealing with school differently. Definitely, they are dealing with school differently in China. Remember our discussion last week about AI and some of its usages in regards to things? I'm going to play you guys this video now. So for whatever I'm saying about school, you think it's deep, you think it's a little bit too much, you think that our expectations are unreasonable, look at what China is developing and how they're dealing with some of their schooling, and then we'll have a discussion. Check this out.
红色是表示你的专注力显示得很高。
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走神了。
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents. China has big plans to become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled a cashless economy where people make purchases with their faces. A giant network of surveillance cameras with facial recognition helps police monitor citizens. Meanwhile, some schools offer glimpses of what the future of high-tech education in the country might look like.
做出选择吧 Good job!
Classrooms have robots that analyze students' health and engagement levels. Students wear uniforms with chips that track their locations. There are even surveillance cameras that monitor how often students check their phones or yawn during classes. These gadgets have alarmed Chinese netizens. But schools say it wasn't hard for them getting parental consent to enroll kids into what is one of the world's largest experiments in AI education. A program that's supposed to boost students' grades while also feeding powerful algorithms.
为了就是国家的这个研究呀、发展呀，我觉得是没有问题的。
The government has poured billions of dollars into the project, bringing together tech giants, startups, and schools. We got exclusive access to a primary school a few hours outside of Shanghai.
同学们早上好
To see firsthand how AI tech is being used in the classroom. For this 5th grade class, the day begins with putting on a brainwave sensing gadget. Students then practice meditating.
现在想象我们眉心有一点柔和的光芒绽放。
The device is made in China and has 3 electrodes, 2 behind the ears and 1 on the forehead. These sensors pick up electrical signals sent by neurons in the brain. The neural data is then sent in real time to the teacher's computer. So while students are solving math problems, a teacher can quickly find out who's paying attention and who's not.
说明这段时间他是有点在那走神的。
A report is then generated that shows how well the class was paying attention. It even details each student's concentration level at 10-minute intervals. It's then sent to a chat group for parents.
就是他可以看到每个人的评分。
The reports are detailed, but whether these devices really work and what they exactly measure isn't as clear.
我们是很集中的。
对对。
We were curious if the headbands could actually measure concentration, so one of our reporters tried on the device.
但我没有感觉自己特别集中。不是，它就是靠你的意念。
This is a new technology with still fairly little research behind it.
Theodore Zanto is a neuroscientist at the University of California, San Francisco. He was surprised to learn that this tech, called electroencephalography, also known as EEG, is being used in the classroom on children. It's usually used by doctors in hospitals and labs.
EEG is very susceptible to artifacts. And so if you are itchy or just a little fidgety, or the EEG wasn't set up properly so that the electrodes didn't have a good contact, affects the signal.
Despite the chances for false readings, teachers told us the headbands have forced students to become more disciplined.
上课回答我的问题，就是他们的声音会比平常更响亮。
Teachers say the students now pay better attention during class, and that has made them study harder and achieve higher scores.
上课认真听讲，作业做的基本上是全对的。
But not all students are as enthusiastic.
实干的时候有这种想法，就是
自己感觉是脑筋空，我感觉这里有个紧的。
This fifth grader, whom we caught dozing off in class, told us his parents punish him for low attention scores. And that kind of data adds a new kind of pressure for students.
想啊，如果在一次考试全班人都考了95分以上，就你考了一个85，你会不会感觉你有一种
Companies we interviewed said the data can go to government-funded research projects. We spoke to parents who were
all right, and there are a couple other things about that. If you want to go on YouTube, you basically look up AI usage in China schools, and those videos will pop up, and you can check it out for yourselves. Imagine if they did that here. Understand that would cause way more conflict and controversy than anything. I could just imagine how some of you parents would feel if you felt that your child was forced to use that. I can imagine if you basically believed that was fully effective to the greatest degree, what type of dealings you would have with your child based upon that. I mean, as you know, modern technology, it has its purpose, but of course, there's still many things to learn in regards to it, as they mentioned in the video. So you can't take all the things that you are learning from that device as gospel. But imagine, if you would, a world where things like that are being used to analyze your child while school is going on. So not only are they in the learning process, but they're also, for the most part, being experimented upon. That's some of the things going on in China right now. So when your child's telling you it's difficult to contend with school and what have you right now, imagine having to contend with it with all that going on. How much more difficult it would be. I like I said, based on some of the students that I know, they would not contend with that well at all. And then, of course, us being creative people that we are, there will, after time, be ways to circumvent that and ways around that to where it's not as effective, because kids will figure out ways to make it at least seem like they're paying more attention, figure out, okay, yeah, I learned if you do this and this with it, then that'll work, or I can make to where it don't work, and then I can use that as an excuse to why the measurement was wrong or what have you. You know how challenging some of our kids can actually be when they put their minds to it. If they can sit down here and figure out TikToks and editing things and whatnot at an early age, why would they not be able to figure out how to get over on that thing as time goes on? Or basically, if that's what we start out with now in China, 5-10 years from now, who knows? You may have a whole device strapped to your whole body that is measuring all types of things in your system while you do school, to make it even that much more demanding. But anyway, that's just an example of what AI could become, and why it's very important that we monitor that very closely as the growth of AI is going on, but also to keep in mind that the Chinese are more willing to contend with it in a way that we as Americans who value our freedoms and independence will not. That being said, we're going to take a little break, take a couple sips of water, advertise a thing or two. Remember, if you have a business that you would like to advertise here on the show, we definitely want to hear from you. We want you to advertise your growing business here on the network. There are people from over 22 states 104 countries that watch the Nighthawk Network at any given time when we are on the air. So what you advertise, you never know what ears and eyes it may reach. So that being said, let's do a couple quick commercials, and when we come on back, we're going to talk more on our School Dayz edition about the education of our young adults. We'll get into some of that when we come back. This is the I Am Nighthawk Pod Show. I am E-Buck the Nighthawk. We'll be back. Hey, this is Eric Buckner here in the Nighthawk Network studios. And for those of you that have pet care, grooming, and vet needs, we want you to contact here in the Detroit area, Meet You There Pet Care. That's Meet You There Pet Care, LLC. The phone number is 313-471-4970. So for those of you that have pet care needs here in the Detroit area, please contact Meet You There Pet Care. They will get you situated with all your home pet care, grooming, and vet tech services. And do know that we want to promote all small and minority businesses here in the Nighthawk Network.
We're not asking for your permission. We're not seeking your approval. We're claiming what's ours in the name of our ancestors. We are their answered prayers. This is more than a movement. This is a revolution. Black innocence. What are yours today?
Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Hello. It's another glorious day, my T-Sippers, and you know what time it is. I hope you have all of your comfort together because it's time to dish tea. And you're dishing tea, darlings, with Big Meech.
Can't wait. It's time to dish tea with Big Meech. It's time to dish tea with Big Meech. It's time to dish tea with Big Meech. It's time to dish tea with Big Meech.
Darling.
Hey, y'all, we are back. This is the I Am Nighthawk Pod Show. I'm your host, Eric Buck, the Nighthawk, and we are talking school days, things that we should discuss with our children and parents in regards to school as we start the school year 2023 to 2024. We're not talking about our middle school children and some of the things that we want to discuss with them. Now, keep in mind, those are our formative years in terms of what is going on, particularly within our bodies. You know, many of us reach the stage of puberty during those times, and that causes us to think and act differently, particularly in regards to people of the opposite sex, in regards to just sex in general. Those are not things that should correlate to what happens during your school day, but it's definitely added distractions as opposed to when you are a younger student. So those are some of the things you definitely want to have a talk about. I'm not here to tell anyone how to raise their child, but in this day and age where movies are more descriptive and insightful as ever in regards to intercourse and things of that nature, where you basically have streaming services that have shows like Euphoria and Game of Thrones, where they depict sex scenes in a way that is way different than what we grew up in, where your child basically has the third parent for their own, and on that parent is internet, and if you do not have the proper internet control, your child can go to a variety of different websites that talk about or show a variety of sexual acts and adult situations that if you basically do not have those discussions with them about them, they may learn on their own or basically get other information from their fellow students and then see that as gospel. I'm pretty sure as most parents, you do not want that to be the case. You should not have the children teaching the other children about sex and that part of life. Those are discussions that I'm pretty sure you would like to have with your children. And in an ideal world that is 2023, probably the sooner that you can comfortably do that, the better off you all will be. Because yes, even though in our country teenage pregnancy is going down at a very good clip, there are still many people under the age of 16 that come up every year with pregnancy issues. Of course, there are the statistics that show that many of us have had situations in our childhood where we were dealt with inappropriately, let's put it that way, in a manner that was not befitting someone of our age or even older. I mean, how many of those cases have we seen over the last couple dozen years or so of students having inappropriate relations with their parent, what not their parent, with their student, with their teacher or their counselor or what have you. These things are going on, and part of why they are is because we oftentimes are not feeling comfortable with talking to our kids when we suspect things like this are happening, or if we feel like that's a possibility and we aren't comfortable discussing with them that. Those are things that would definitely help the education process if you have those discussions with your children so that when they go to school, particularly around that middle school, early high school years, that you're not caught unawares with things. And these types of situations are blown up big time because there was just a lack of education on your part. Remember, the educational process should not just be held to that of our teachers, particularly those teachers who are definitely being underpaid, and teachers that are learning that the people behind them are not quite as invested. If you have looked at some of the statistics lately, teachers are retiring at a far greater rate. A lot of people choosing to leave the profession early even because they are feeling undervalued and they're just not making the type of money that they can make doing other things, to be quite honest. So there's that. In terms of middle school years, understand that a lot of the things you are learning should be more formulated toward what's going to happen in your adult life than as opposed to the things you are learning on the elementary level. There are several schools that are both elementary and middle schools. I personally don't think that that's as great a thing. I mean, it helps from the standpoint that you've established a certain repertoire with that school over the last 4 or 5 years. So as that kid continues to go to that particular school, there may be that comfortability factor that you would not have by just sending them to a straight up middle school. But in the same token, when there's an environment and it's set up to where there are bigger kids around smaller kids and they are interacting in a way to where that could be rather not good, that is my concern with that. Like I said, I'm not a parent. I just know certain things based on talking to parents and being in environments with children and whatnot and learning some of the things that they are saying to their parents in regards to these types of things. You definitely want to have a conversation, if you haven't already, at that point about some of the things people are doing to bully people. Because like I said, a lot of children at that point are deep into the third parent at that point. So they probably have their own social media accounts on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. Several of you parents, if you are not hip to how these things work by now, that's something you probably need to know. Keep in mind, these are the social media sites that are common that we know about. There are other things such as Snapchat and other apps that are constantly being made all the time, where kids are going on those and have secret accounts that you may not know about, that a variety of different outlandish things may be going on. Lord knows you would hate to learn that your children are out here making explicit videos that you didn't know about, that people have access to what they look like without clothes on, things of that nature. That's definitely something that, as a parent, I would want to know existed if that's the case. I would definitely say there should be no child. I'm gonna go as far as 16. Anybody 16 and under should not have a phone that cannot be fully accessed by their parent. I strongly believe that, because there should be nothing on that child's phone that you should not be able to see for yourself. If your child has things on that phone that you do not approve of, that's something you should know about. So your child should give you access to their PIN code or whatnot. That being said, yes, your child should have a PIN code on the phone, because as you know, that phone could be utilized to access a variety of different information that could be very harmful, not only to them, but to you and your household. I mean, basically, there are people who, if they have access to your child's phone, can pretty much gain your phone number, your social security, your bank account information, all that stuff. So yeah, there absolutely should be some type of code on the phone, regardless of age. But you, as said parent, and more than likely the person paying for said phone, should have access to that password so that you can look at that phone at any given moment. And I myself feel like, as a parent, I would periodically phone check. Let me see this phone. Now, you already know if you get certain reactions like, oh, mama, no, then you already know why you acting like that. You got something to hide, huh? There should be nothing to hide. Y'all remember that episode years ago, The Cosby Show, where the kids wanted to act up to the point where Bill was like, okay, so y'all want to act like that? You no longer have any privacy. And what did he do? He took them hinges out the door and took their door off and left their room wide open for anybody to come in and see at any time. If you feel like you're having trust issues with your child to that point, I ain't got a problem with that. I know some parents will feel like, okay, that's a bit much. Your child should have some type of privacy as time goes on. If they prove that they are not trustworthy to that degree, you got to do what you got to do to get your child to understand fully that that ain't how we do things here. This is my household. This is what I expect. This is what is expected of you. If you have an issue with this, then so be. That being said, let's move on to high school. Of course, that is another key component here. In terms of the behavioral issues, the teachers that I've talked to that have the hardest time dealing are our high school teachers. Keep in mind, high school is a whole different animal than it was when I was growing up. All right, we got some comments here. Zach is saying, my sister does foster care and all the kids have phones, but she's got them all set up on a program so she can monitor all their phones from hers and show them off from her phone. That's very good. If you can set that up, do that. If you basically set up your phone to where whatever your child's putting on their phone, you can see on your phone, I'd do that. I have no problem with that at all. High school is different now because we talk about our kids as being young adults and we expect them to behave as such, but some of the attitudes and the tomfoolery that has gone on in terms of school is different now, especially with them having access to social media. Pretty much anything in terms of bad or disruptive behavior is usually being recorded by one or several of them as it goes on. Basically, if you go to YouTube, basically our reference point of our lifetime, type in high school fights, hundreds will probably pop up of different fights involving schools and different situations and what have you. That's not what you send your child to school for. Your child is not to go to school to learn how to fight or to join some type of gang or things of that nature. You're sending them to get educated and learn how to operate in society. Now, granted, these types of things go on, but again, that's not what you're sending your child to school for, so you should not have to worry about them engaging in that, nor should you have your children deal with people who are engaging in that. So again, checking out your child's environment should be of utmost importance. Don't just send them to the natural school that's close to your house because it's convenient. If you basically check out the high school and you learn that's not an environment that you want your young adult to be a part of, then you should take the time, whether it means you need to take off work for a few days or basically have one of the guardians of your children, one of the secondary parents, so to speak, say an aunt or uncle or grandmother, go to the different schools and check them out so you find a school that is fitting what your child needs are in terms of their education, then do that. Understand that there are different schools for different types of children. There are schools now for people who have special needs. There are special needs schools. If your child is a special needs child, say your child is autistic or handicapped even, there are schools designed specifically for that. There are many schools that do have curriculums for special education. So you definitely want to look into that. What type of things are they teaching the kids? Are they teaching your handicapped child, your child perhaps that may have vision or hearing issues, how to function to where they'll be able to possibly take care of themselves to some degree when they become an adult, or they basically rubber stamping them through the system? If you have a child that is a child that has gifts, if they are like a highly intelligent child, are you sending them to basic school A where they're not really using those talents to their full potential? I mean, are you basically sending a child to school at 13 that basically could deal with the high school they're in like a few weeks and be ready to graduate? These are things that you should know. If you're not sure where your child fits into that spectrum, have them tested. You never know what your child may be capable of if you don't sit down and take the time to get to know them. I learned of a child who basically was a child that had the gift of remembering everything. I believe that's called eidetic memory, or basically whatever you see or whatever happens to you on any given day, you remember fully. It was a gift that they pretty much hid from their parent because they felt like their parent didn't really care about them enough to know them. So, it would come up in times in conversations and that parent really didn't get it. And wow, how did that child remember I said that to that degree? When basically they finally found out that this child had the eidetic memory, he was already in high school and at that point could have went to college and graduated college already, but basically was kind of behind because that was not properly identified early on. Not to say that you should force your child to go to that degree. If basically if they choose to just kind of stay along with their peers, that's a child decision that you should make with your child. If that child actually though is brilliant enough to where they can move on and move forward, be a college graduate at 16 or whatnot, by all means, don't stifle their growth. Let them thrive. Okay, that checking in again, he's saying, how do you feel about teaching gun control and gun safety in schools? Very good question, sir. Unfortunately, that is something that we have to contend with now. As you know, in this past decade, we have had more school shootings on a regular basis than in ever the history of these United States. Understand that these things do go on in other countries, but it is very minute compared to what goes on here in America. As a result, now we have to consider, particularly in our high schools where most of these shootings are taking place, what type of safety measures that school has in terms of gun control. I mean, do we go as far as to teach our young people how to handle a weapon of mass destruction if necessary? I'm sure there are some parents that feel like my kid know how to use a gun, they go hunting and stuff. I would send them to school with it if it was legal. That's a bad way to have to feel like you got to go to school, but I get it. Yeah, you definitely want to know what type of safety measures that school has in place in regards to what happens in cases of emergencies involving gun violence. Just like you would want to know what they do in case of a hurricane or hailstorm or whatever the case may be, because these things absolutely do occur. I mean, maybe something is like, okay, what happens if a dog gets into the school, or what if there's an outbreak of good old C-19? What is the procedure in regards to that? These are things that you definitely want to know about the schools you're going to. Oftentimes, a lot of schools send home different types of packets and curriculum builders and things of that nature. Don't just toss that stuff to the side. If they send that home with your child, sit down and look at it. Actually look at it together with your child. See if you both have any questions in regards to that. Feel like you are going to have your child go to a school where you can contact the administrative offices if there is some questions that need to be addressed. If you are having your child go to a school and you get to talk to the principal and the principal sounds like a total a-hole or someone that's not really involved in it's basically just a job to them, that may not be an environment that you want your child to be involved in. Speaking of specialty schools, let's just say your child is that gifted athlete and you want to send them to a school that's going to help better prepare them for a good college or perhaps a professional career in sports. You want to look into those types of schools. Let's just say your child is a musical genius or are gifted in the arts, such as acting or dance arts, things of that nature. You might want to look for a school that specializes in that. So those are things that you definitely want to talk about, and things that you want to look to in regards to putting your child in a school that is best suited for their needs. One of the things that you definitely want to look into in terms of schools is what are their computer capabilities. I ask that because in the ideal world, most schools nowadays are not only just schools in terms of the paperwork, but are also schools online to where if your children are receiving grades, they are inputted into someone's computer system, and that computer system can in turn be accessed by you, the parent, so you can get a running understanding of what is going on in your kid's academic season, so that you don't have to wait until report card day to know that your kid is struggling in math or not doing so hot with English literature or whatever the case may be, and you can address it beforehand. A lot of schools are not stressing as much the good old parent-teacher conference because a lot of times when they have them, most of the parents, they're not showing up at all. And when they do show up, they only show up with that bad scenario and my kid's being picked on, or why is my kid not doing good? I blame you, blah, blah, blah. As opposed to having some helpful dialogue that helps both student and parent and teacher work this thing out amongst them all. So there is that. So one of the things I'm definitely hoping you gain from this conversation is that you as parents have just as much, if not more, responsibility for helping your child educate and be educated as anyone. It should not just be that when your child goes to school, they learn it, and when they get home, they are allowed to just completely forget about everything, not worry about homework, not worry about anything that they learn. One of the excellent ideas that I got from someone, and I've actually been doing that for just myself, is if you don't have the time to sit down and talk to your child on a daily basis, what you do is you come up with a plan such as this. You actually have your child get a notebook. Hold on as I scoot through the classroom, also known as Nighthouse Studio, and you have them get a notebook. And on this notebook, I have entitled it, "What is the most important thing I learned today?" And every day, or at least every other day, I try to write down what I felt was the thing that stuck out the most to me about my day that I've learned. And when you have time, perhaps it may not be to the weekend or maybe when holidays or whatnot. Okay, what have you been learning in school? What can you tell me you learned? Because most times not kids be like, we learned this and that. And it might just be based on whatever class was popping that day or wherever the incident. You know, they quick to come home and tell you, Mom, in school today, such and such have fight or blah, 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 they split. But in terms of what they are learning, you always got to pull and dig it out of them as to what they are learning. You can have them sit down and write down, okay, this is what I'm learning, and then be able to address it as you have time to. That helps with the dialogue that you have with your young people. Again, for those of you who are parents of multiple students, I know it is very difficult to keep up with them all, particularly if you are people like my good buddy who has tuned in. You know who you are. I'm not going to call you out by name, but you have several children and they all are of school age for the most part. So I know that's a lot to have to contend with. I really, really felt for you when the pandemic was going on and you had to deal with the online learning. That was a lot for one parent, let alone one set of parents to have to contend with that many students. So I know you were very glad when school started back, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with the opinion that I pretty much got from most people that said that in an ideal world, online learning is probably not the best thing for any student, whether they choose to go to school or not. I myself have always said I probably wouldn't have minded as much being an online student. That's because I really, at least during that time, was not good with interacting with folks to a great degree. You know, it's funny now because I'm very much a people person now at this stage of my life. But back when I was going to school, I just assumed go and get it in and be out. You know, there were times in my school life where I enjoyed going to school and being around people my age, but there were other times where I really could care less. It was just about, it became more like work to me. And I know it's important for you to have your children have fun being a child and enjoying some of the fun things about school, but in the same token, we are growing up in a different world and we have to kind of contend with things a bit differently, unfortunately. Okay, definitely want to talk about a couple more things before we call it an evening. Those of you dealing with that child that is in that brilliant thing we call senior year, understand based upon what we've seen in social media and on the news these last couple of years, these seniors have bigger expectations than ever before to what qualifies as a good senior year. A lot of them are expecting that in the senior year they'll be going on senior trips and doing senior activities. There's the prom and graduation and parties and all of that. These things, if they trying to do it to the big ups that they previous predecessors have, are going to cost money. The time to start saving for these things is now, right now. Because if you're trying to do it big and oh yeah, you did your little prime setup with the king and queen court and all that, that's nothing compared to what I'm doing for my child. You don't want to be trying to scramble for that money now if that's what you choose to do. You want to be able to start saving up for that throughout the year so when April and May comes, you have the money necessary to do it. If you feel like you have to do that for your children, as a person who is not a parent, it's hard for me to sit here and completely criticize what you might do for your child. It's kind of not my place. But in the same token, I can say, based on this being my show, where I'm entitled to my own opinion on my show, that some of y'all doing way too much. I mean, way too much for situations to where your child may remember it years later, but not fully appreciate it to years and years later. The sacrifices that you have made in order to move heaven and earth to make these things the spectacles that they are becoming. The thousands of dollars that you are spending on car rentals and tuxedos and prom dresses and shoes, so on and so forth. I understand you always want to live a life to where your child has it better than you did, but in the same token, I think some of us are going overboard and looking at how some of these children deal with their parents and vice versa. They're not always worthy of this type of effort that you put in at the end to show them that you care to that degree. Some of them just ain't worthy of it, to be honest. And then, of course, we want to also talk about our college kids for a few minutes here. For those of you starting college for the first time, it could be a very scary proposition to be in charge of yourself fully for the most part for the first time in your life. Some people don't contend with it with. They become very, what's the word I want to say? They have anxieties about things that they didn't have to worry about before, particularly if you are a person coming from a smaller environment, going to a bigger environment. As you know, there are some people that attend colleges and universities that live in small towns, and now suddenly you're at this big university. Is a very different environment than what you might be used to. You may come from a town that just had one McDonald's or one Burger King, and now you go into a college town where there's a Burger King, McDonald's on the school premises. Those types of things. It could be a big, gigantic culture shock for that person. You might want to do your best to walk them through it. In an ideal world, I say if your child is going to a college, see if it's possible to find someone on that campus that you are comfortable with, or basically somebody who has gone to that campus in recent years, and kind of walk them through some of the things that you may not be privy to know about in terms of what goes on in campus and whatnot. Kind of give them the do's and don'ts, or at least a more thorough understanding of, okay, Michigan State's campus, we do this, or on Arizona State's campus, we do that, wherever you may be going to school at. That part. Also understand if your child is not really sure if college is for them, if they have chosen to kind of take a little bit more time to figure things out before they go to school, there are places where they can do that. Many of our environments or cities and states now have community colleges or even trade schools that your child could attend, where they can learn some skills while they try to figure out what they want to do with their life, as opposed to just sitting around and trying to figure things out. Some people, they may figure out that, okay, I'm done with school. I learned everything I needed to learn. I'm not doing college on any level. I'm ready to start working. We need to start doing a better job of helping them out with that process, because many times now our kids are graduating from high school and college, and then suddenly we are trying to get them to start paying bills and learning about rental agreements and mortgages and phone contracts and all that. And they have no clue, because you have never sat down and discussed any of that with them. You chose to keep it from them because you feel like that was part of being a child, not having to worry about that. Now all of a sudden, all these things are new to them. These are not things that are being taught in most of our schools in regards to economics and things of that nature. These are things that we are learning on the fly once we get out of school. So I think as people who are parents and people in the village that may have those types of knowledges and whatnot, it is our job to help our kids through those times as they become adults. Remember now, most people are not necessarily rushing their children out of the household once they become 18. It is not being taught that, okay, the ideal scenario is to gain some employment and start a family and get married and all that. We are teaching our kids different things now. So as a result of that, we are dealing with it differently. So we need to sit down and have these discussions. I think if we've learned anything tonight in regards to this discussion on schools, and again, if you are tuning in now and have learned some things, or basically have some differences of opinions or whatnot, and want to kind of go back later on and add comments to the broadcast, by all means do so. If you are checking this broadcast out later on and want to add your comments, as some of y'all often do, feel free, and I usually get back to you within those comments and give you my thoughts on your thoughts. The world is drastically changing by the day, folks. And school is not the school that we went to as adults. It's not even the school that people younger than myself went to as children. It is changing fast, and we got to do our best to keep up with these things in order to be able to relate to our young people, because again, they are the future. And if in the end the future is being taught to them and they are not fully grasping it, when the time comes for them to deal with things, how well will they be able to deal with it? For all we know, the next pandemic is out there somewhere, and 5-10 years from now when it happens, will our children be able to contend with things better than we did? You would like to hope so, but maybe not. More of us are in more financial debt now than we ever have been. If we are not teaching our children financial responsibilities early on in the process, when it's their time to come and buy cars and get credits and things of that nature, how well would they be able to deal with it if we barely know? These are some of the things that we have to think about outside of what they are learning in the classroom. And again, another concern should be the fact that more and more people are now saying, when I grow up, I don't want to be a teacher. They go through too much. They don't get respect. They don't make enough money. I don't want that for me. What happens then? Do we start to have AI teachers that are teaching our kids? And how effective is that? Is that something we want? These are all things that we need to think about moving forward. But most importantly, what we want in terms of our school is for our kids to have a good school year, be successful, get good grades, and most importantly, come home the way they left safely. So before we leave tonight, I would like to take the time for us to all take a moment to pray on this school year. I will do that now. Dear Lord, please watch over our young people and our educators this year. Keep them safe. Help them to help one another in this cause to educate us all. Please watch over all these facilities and all of the places all across the country, all across the world where people are learning and being educated. Give people the mindset that these are safe havens where people are here for knowledge and not for trouble, not for crime, not for all the other horrible things that have been happening over the course of the years. Let us have the safest and most blessed school year possible. Thee, I thank you, Lord. Amen. So hopefully these things that we talked about were helpful. If nothing else, if you gain nothing else from this conversation this evening, please take the time to sit down with your kids, discuss with them school, the good, the bad, the ugly, and as a family, make decisions moving forward. That is what I would hope for you. Next week on the pod show, I think we will be discussing, well, of course, I have another discussion of what are we doing. We'll talk about that. But also, I think we're going to have to discuss what is going on in the country that is taking up most of the news cycle, the very sad situation that we are finding ourselves in. We're going to have to talk about the clown, y'all. Y'all know who I'm talking about. We'll go there next week. In the meanwhile, have a good week. I'll be back tomorrow to talk sports with y'all on the Big Buck Sports Report. We are going to talk college football as it is almost that time. I'm going to give you who I think will win this year's national championship and talk about some other school. We're definitely going to get into what's going on with the breaking up of the conferences and the NILs and all that good stuff. We're going to talk about all those things as we are doing School Dayz week here on the Nighthawk Network Detroit. Tomorrow's school discussion will be about college sports. So please join me then for that. I thank you guys very much for being a part of the show and for checking out the content and for all your comments and all the love you show. We will catch up with you guys next week. Until then, I am E-Buck the Nighthawk. As always, I ask you to be blessed. Don't stress. Do what you can and let the good Lord deal with the rest, my friends. Until next time, we're going to throw the deuces up. And we are going to be up out of here. See y'all. Peace.